The name alone carried weight, like a gravitational pull in the room's atmosphere. Humanity, the Union's youngest member, the unpredictable anomaly. They had clawed their way from ruin and radiation into interstellar prominence in a mere 4 standard centuries. An impossible feat. A disturbing one. When their representative arrived, the murmurs ceased as if the void itself had inhaled. The doors parted, and Ambassador Elara Hayes walked in. No guards, no entourage. Just one human, clad in a tailored black uniform trimmed with faint silver. Formal, restrained. Her eyes, however, were storms contained within glass. She bowed slightly, hands folded before her in the ancient Terran gesture of peace. The Othari delegate clicked its mandibles. Alone? Arrogant. Hayes merely smiled, thin, polite, unfazed. Every movement she made was deliberate, controlled. It was as though she knew the scrutiny she commanded. There was elegance to her stillness, the kind predators display before the pounce. The chair, a being older than dust, floated into the center sphere, its voice a harmonic vibration that made the chamber resonate. "Let the record show," it intoned, "that this assembly convenes to address the continued violations of expansion protocols by the Human Confederacy." A wave of approval rippled through the chamber. I found myself joining in the soft, rhythmic motion of assent. Humanity. Always advancing, always claiming, always smiling. They had colonized 6 unapproved worlds, weaponized mining fleets, and dared to patrol borders reserved for the core civilizations. Their military technology evolved faster than even our predictive algorithms could track, and yet they remained courteous. Even now, the ambassador's voice, smooth, calm, unsettlingly quiet, echoed through the sphere. "We are honored to be here." "Council Chair, humanity seeks only coexistence." Her tone carried neither pride nor submission, just fact, as if coexistence was a law of physics, not a request. The Drelian minister scoffed, its gelatinous form pulsing in agitation. "Coexistence does not include militarizing entire sectors," Hayes inclined her head. "Nor does it include firing upon civilian survey ships. Yet we continue to coexist." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. Several delegates recoiled. The human had not raised her voice, yet the impact of her words resonated like an energy pulse. I studied her closely, every muscle, every blink calculated. There was no trace of fear. But beneath that polite mask, something else shimmered. Something deep. Something dangerous. I recalled ancient Varn teachings. Beware the creature that kills calmly. The chair's many eyes pulsed dimly. "We are not here to debate semantics, Ambassador. The Council must vote on measures to restrain your people's unchecked expansion." Polite applause followed, ritualistic approval for the chair's authority. The sound rippled, hollow, self-assured. Only the human remained still, her expression unchanged. For a moment, the chamber's light dimmed as the orbiting gas giant's shadow passed. The silence stretched. I caught my reflection in the transparent wall, eyes wide, throat tight, and saw her standing there, a single figure of composure among thousands, and I thought, perhaps the humans have finally learned humility. Then she looked up, meeting my gaze across the distance. No smile, no motion, just eyes like quiet engines burning behind glass. Something ancient in me recoiled. At that moment, I realized humility was never what defined them. It was restraint, and restraint in any creature was not infinite. The chair raised its staff of verdicts, ready to begin the vote. I should have known. That was the moment the galaxy began to tremble, though none of us felt it yet. The chamber dimmed to twilight as the first hologram ignited in the center of the grand sphere, an image of fire suspended in air. Planetary sieges, entire skies streaked with human warships descending in perfect formation. Gasps rippled through the gathered species, 1,000 tongues clicking, hissing, murmuring. Each scene unfolded like a confession, broadcast to the stars. The chair's ancient voice thrummed through the silence. "The evidence is clear. Unauthorized expansion. Colonization without sanction. fleet movements through restricted zones. Humanity stands in violation of at least 37 interstellar accords. I could feel my pulse through my carapace. Around me, the delegates swelled with self-righteous noise. Outrage, disgust, fear disguised as law. Ambassador Hayes remained utterly still. She didn't fidget, didn't blink. The flickering light of destruction painted her face in shifting reds and blues. To every accusation hurled, she gave the same calm, measured tone. We expanded into abandoned systems. We built on ruins you left to decay. We defended against pirates you ignored. Her voice was quiet, but the weight behind each syllable felt surgical, cutting through layers of hypocrisy with terrifying precision. The Othari delegate struck the table with its spined limb. "You act without permission." Hayes turned her head slightly, as though studying a curious insect. "We acted because you lacked the courage to." The chamber erupted. I found myself joining the chorus of condemnation. My words spilled out, the collective fear of my species given voice. "Your aggression threatens us all. You humans breed war like others breathe." And then she looked at me. That gaze, impossibly human yet ancient in its stillness, froze me. My throat locked. My frills flattened in instinctive submission. I had stood before warlords, assassins, predators, but never before something that understood violence yet chose not to use it. Her eyes held no anger, no indignation, just a terrible quiet. She took a breath. When she finally spoke, her tone was almost gentle. "Counselor Zelrith, tell me, when your dominion was attacked by the Creel, who came to your aid?" My mouth opened, then closed. Memories flashed. Human vessels arriving unbidden, intercepting enemy fleets, saving millions of my kind. "We did," she continued. "We fought your wars, protected your trade. You asked for soldiers. We gave you legions. You asked for innovation. We gave you engines that bent light. You needed order. We gave you peace." Her words were not arrogance. They were inventory, a list of debts unacknowledged. "And now," she said softly, "you call that aggression." For a heartbeat, the room was airless. Even the chair hesitated. I could feel it, something shifting beneath the council's veneer of authority. Then the Nith Dominion's grand speaker slammed its claws on the dais. "This insolence cannot stand! We demand sanctions. Immediate military containment of Earth and all human colonies." Cheers. Applause. The smell of collective fear. Hayes did not move. Her silence was the sharpest sound in the room. She turned slowly, her eyes sweeping across the council tiers like a targeting system registering heat signatures. "Containment," she repeated. "You think we can be contained?" No one answered. Her voice dropped to a whisper, yet every translator drone amplified it perfectly. "You mistake restraint for weakness." A tremor ran through me, instinctive, primal. The kind felt by prey when the predator finally decides to stand. The chair rapped its staff, breaking the moment. The council will deliberate, but no one heard. Every eye remained on the human ambassador, who now stood surrounded by the holographic flames of her people's deeds. For the first time, she looked tired, not defeated, just finished. She adjusted her cuffs, the gesture precise, final. "Do as you must," she said. "So will we." The lights flickered. Somewhere in the chamber's upper strata, the holograms stuttered, static across their glowing surfaces, like fractures in glass. The first crack, small, invisible, but I felt it. Something had changed. The tension in the room was no longer fear of humanity. It was the awareness that something vast and patient had just ended. I watched as Hayes turned and left the chamber in silence. No guards, no words, just the quiet echo of boots on glass. I remember thinking, the universe will remember this day, and beneath that thought, deeper still, something darker whispered, "So will she." The alarms began as a whisper. Not the shriek of sirens, no, something quieter. Subspace ripples, faint distortions in the perimeter sensors that surrounded the Council's core worlds. At first we dismissed them as phantom echoes, gravitational mirages from the gas rings. But then the readings multiplied. 10, then 100, then 1,000, then 10,000. By the time we realized what we were seeing, the void outside our borders was already alive. Human ships. They did not arrive with fanfare or weapon fire. They did not issue demands or transmit ultimatums. They simply appeared, filling every scanner, every layer of space, every shadow between the stars. Millions of vessels, each identical in design, black holes with silver streaks that caught the faint light of nearby suns. They didn't move aggressively, they just aligned. Formations formed like thoughts, synchronized across parsecs, mathematically perfect, terrifyingly quiet. I stood in the chamber again, surrounded by the Council's elite, those who once mocked the humans as primitive, emotional creatures. Now their voices trembled, their frills twitched, their many eyes blinked in disbelief. The chair demanded communication. Send a diplomatic hail. Request clarification. No answer. Then, without warning, every holoscreen across the chamber flickered to life. Static. Then, clarity. A human face appeared. Not Hayes this time. A man, weathered and solemn, wearing the insignia of the Human Confederacy's Defense Command. Behind him, a window opened to reveal the sight of 1,000 ships hanging in silence over a pale blue world. His voice was low, controlled, the kind of tone I had heard from executioners. Before the sentence was read, for years, we've been polite. The words rolled through the chamber, amplified by the translator drones, yet somehow retaining that raw human gravity. Cooperative, patient. We endured the insults, the embargoes, the sabotage, even the sanctions meant to starve our colonies. We tolerated all of it because we believed peace was worth it. He paused. His eyes, human and unblinking, stared through us. But you drew blood one time too many. Behind him, the holographic feed shifted, revealing a planet burning. The translation lagged for half a second as the system identified it. Arden the Fort. A human colony. The footage cut closer, cities reduced to vapor, children running toward shelters that never opened, shock waves flattening forests, oceans boiling under plasma bombardment. The attack log flashed across the feed. Council Patrol Authorization, Sector 09 Delta. We had done this. Silence filled the chamber. Even the air recyclers seemed to hush. The general continued, his tone almost mournful. We asked for explanation. We were told it was an accident, that no one was to blame, that our people were acceptable losses. He leaned forward. No more accidents. The signal faded into black. Then Hayes rose from her seat in the chamber. No one stopped her. No guards moved. She didn't even activate a mic. Her voice carried without effort, clear and razor-edged. You taught us diplomacy, she said. We learned it well. She stepped toward the center dais, eyes fixed on the council chair. But you never learned consequence. I could feel the shift, something invisible pressing down, a weight that wasn't gravity but inevitability. Through the transparent dome above, the light of distant stars dimmed. Our outer sensors went blind one by one. Human ships had moved closer. The Othari began to shout, orders, threats, pleas, but their voices were drowned out by the hum. That low, unified vibration spreading across every frequency. The sound of powering weapons. The display grids across the walls lit up with impossible numbers. Fleet counts. Energy signatures, targeting locks across every council stronghold. I tried to speak, but my throat locked. I had studied war all my life. I knew the patterns of chaos, of emotion-driven violence. This was something else entirely. This was precision. Hayes turned her gaze upward as if listening to a distant command. Her expression was serene, eerily so. They won't fire unless provoked, the chair said, his voice cracking. She met his gaze. You provoked us a long time ago. The words hit harder than any weapon. Then, outside, a single flare ignited, a silent bloom of light. One of our outer defense stations ceased to exist. No debris. No explosion, just gone. Every council delegate screamed at once. Hayes did not move. We tried being polite, she murmured. Now we'll be understood. The chamber lights flickered again, replaced by the pulsing glow of emergency crimson. Transmission channels overloaded. Subspace comms jammed. Every console around me went dead. And then, silence. Total, suffocating silence. Through the viewport, the human fleet began to shift, not attacking, not retreating, just moving, as if preparing for something that transcended simple warfare. I remember the sensation, not of fear, but of witnessing the galaxy exhale before a storm. It was then I finally understood what polite mode, turning off, meant. It wasn't rage. It wasn't vengeance. It was inevitability, the end of tolerance. The humans didn't scream. They didn't gloat. They executed. The void itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the first command. And when it came, it wasn't a shout. It was a whisper that carried through every frequency, through every mind linked to the Council net. War did not begin with sound. It began with silence. Every comm beacon across the Council network flickered once, then went dark. Command nodes, relay stations, long-range arrays, gone, not destroyed, but deleted, precision struck at the molecular level. The void that replaced their signals was so absolute it felt sentient. We had imagined the human offensive would roar like the storms of the Drell Core, noisy, chaotic, emotional. Instead, it came like the extinguishing of light. Within an hour, 3 of our defense sectors had fallen, not in battle, but in absence. Fleets didn't burn. They simply ceased to function. Engines refused ignition. Navigation went blind. Every piece of code, every line of logic, overwritten by something simple, elegant, human. They had not fired first. They had disabled us. Our generals screamed into empty channels. Open frequencies! Negotiate! Send the chair's signal! But no one answered. The humans didn't reply because they didn't need to. They spoke through their actions now. I watched from the orbital towers of my homeworld, Varn Theta, as the human ships appeared in low orbit, sleek black arrows cutting across the stratosphere. Their movements had rhythm, precision, purpose, each one targeting only military installations, energy reactors, fleet yards. Not cities. Not civilians, we called them savages once, beasts in suits of steel. But what I saw now were gods dissecting creation. One of the command aides whispered beside me, trembling, "Why don't they finish us?" I didn't answer. Because I knew they weren't here to destroy us. They were here to teach us. Hours passed under the quietest siege in galactic history. Ships drifted above us, their dark silhouettes eclipsing the sun in intervals. Every strike was measured, almost graceful, an orchestra of inevitability. Then, suddenly, a flicker in the sky, an orbital ring breaking apart. My world's pride, our grand monument to unity, collapsing in silence. Segments of metal drifted down through the atmosphere, burning like falling stars. The humans did not celebrate. They simply moved to the next target. Every transmission we sent to them went unanswered. No threats, no negotiations, just absence. And then, amid the chaos, a familiar face filled the broadcast grid. Ambassador Elara Hayes. Her image shimmered above the ruins of our council world. Her once flawless uniform now streaked with dust and blood. Her hair clung to her face, her expression calm. Tired but not broken, she spoke, and even through static, her voice carried the same unflinching clarity. We gave you every chance to coexist. Her eyes swept across the chamber feeds, as if she could see every terrified delegate watching from their bunkers. You chose fear over friendship, control over cooperation, and now, she paused. The silence afterward was heavier than her words. We are merely responding, in your language. The transmission cut, no dramatics, no closing statement. Just truth dropped like a blade. Around me, my fellow counselors broke down, some in rage, others in prayer. The Othari screamed for countermeasures. The Drelian threatened vengeance. I simply stared at the empty broadcast feed, my mind fracturing between awe and horror. I had once believed human politeness to be submission, a shield for weakness. Now I saw it for what it was, control. The calm before the controlled detonation. the quiet heartbeat before thunder. We had mistaken discipline for deference. Now that discipline had been released. Every few hours, new reports streamed in, what little could still reach us. The human fleets were not annihilating, they were editing the galaxy, striking only those who fired back, disabling only those who resisted, rendering entire armadas inert without a single visible explosion. It was a war waged by ghosts. The Varn Dominion sent an emissary flotilla to beg for terms. None returned. We later found the flotilla's ships drifting, engines cold, their crews alive but asleep. Their navigational cores had been rewritten with a single line of code, pulsing in blue script across every console. You are safe. Stay still. Even mercy, it seemed, had become their weapon. I found myself trembling, not from fear of death, but from the realization that they had mastered restraint so thoroughly they could end empires without rage. When I finally closed my eyes that cycle, I heard the faint hum of human ships in the sky. The sound was steady, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. And then, darkness. When I awoke, our planetary defense grid was gone. The human fleet had left orbit. Not a single surface city had been touched. Not one civilian harmed, but every government, every weapon, every means of defiance had been erased with the precision of surgery. The Council's central world lay in ruins, not destroyed, but humbled. From the last surviving relay, Hayes's final transmission replayed across the known sectors. Her tone was softer now, almost mournful. We never wanted this. We warned you, again and again, but you mistook silence for surrender. A pause. Then the faintest trace of sorrow. This was not our choice. It was yours. The feed ended. I stared at the empty projection for a long time, feeling something in me fracture. I had called them monsters, yet they had shown restraint that no god in our history had ever managed. Their politeness had not been an act. It was the dam holding back a flood that could reshape galaxies. And now, that dam was gone. The stars outside our world glowed faintly red from distant battles. But here, there was peace. A peace earned not through agreement, but through annihilation of resistance. A peace forged from consequence. As I watched human relief ships descend to deliver supplies to the very worlds they'd crippled, I whispered into the still air, you weren't pretending to be civilized. You were pretending to be harmless. And for the first time in all recorded history, the galaxy finally understood what it meant when humanity's polite mode turned off. The galaxy bled quietly. In the aftermath of humanity's silent advance, chaos rippled through the Council. Old alliances fractured overnight. Entire species turned inward, clutching at survival like drowning men clutching debris. The once mighty chamber that had ruled 10,000 systems dissolved into a cacophony of panic. Some species fled, evacuating their homeworlds, abandoning colonies, erasing records to hide from the inevitable. Others begged. Pleas for peace, for forgiveness, for terms, sent into the void, unanswered, but a few chose defiance. The Nith Dominion, proud and venomous, launched what history would later call the last offensive. Their fleets, numbering in the thousands, surged from the edge of the Perseus Gate, brilliant, furious, desperate. They never reached their targets. The humans struck from light hours away. No beams, no visible energy. Just impact-kinetic slugs traveling at a fraction of light speed punched through the Dominion's vessels before their sensors even registered an attack. In less than 12 minutes, the largest armada in Council history ceased to exist. No wreckage, no survivors, only vapor trails drifting through the void. The lesson was clear. Resistance was not punished. It was erased. On Varn Theta, I watched the last Council broadcasts as they flickered between horror and disbelief. Delegates shouting over one another, fleets scrambling, civilizations collapsing into chaos. Every report carried the same refrain. They don't conquer, they correct. Within days, the humans had secured every key node in the Council's network. Starports reactivated under human control. Supply chains resumed, directed by human algorithms. Hospitals reopened, staffed by human medics and drones. They hadn't occupied us in the old sense of war. They had stabilized us. No banners, no declarations, no occupation speeches. Just order, cold, efficient, absolute. They dismantled the very concept of empire and replaced it with something terrifyingly rational and still. They never celebrated. When they came for the council chamber, no one resisted. There was nothing left to resist with. The great marble hall that had once housed the universe's most powerful minds was now a mausoleum of failure. Holographic displays hung in static, banners burned to ash. The air was heavy with the scent of ozone and defeat. The doors trembled once, then fell inward. Smoke curled across the polished floor as Ambassador Elara Hayes stepped through, flanked by two silent soldiers in matte black armor. She looked different now, older. Her uniform torn, the emblem of earth stained dark. Her eyes were calm but not cold. In her hand, she carried a small cylindrical device. No weapon, no symbol of conquest. Just a data core. Without a word, she walked to the center of the chamber and placed it on the floor. Its faint blue glow reflected off the marble like moonlight on still water. "This," she said softly, "contains every treaty, every insult, every compromise you've ever written in the name of peace." She looked around the chamber, meeting every terrified gaze. It ends today. No one spoke. The silence was unbearable. The chair of the Galactic Council, a being so ancient their name was a title, not an identity, rose shakily to their feet. Their voice was thin, trembling. "What? What are you?" Hayes studied them for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, just the faintest smile. "Politeness," she said, "was a privilege." And with that, she turned and walked away. No order to fire. No demand for surrender. Just quiet footsteps fading into the smoke. The humans left the chamber intact. They didn't raise a flag. They didn't claim the throne. They simply withdrew. Moments later, the data core activated. Holograms unfolded in slow sequence. Every treaty ever signed. Every broken promise. Every lie told in the name of diplomacy. The walls shimmered with history's hypocrisy. The records of centuries projected in full, for every remaining system to see. The Council's sins, exposed not by their enemies, but by their own archives. By dawn, the Council as a governing body was dissolved. No decree, no ceremony, just the quiet understanding that it no longer deserved to exist. Across the stars, human fleets moved like caretakers rather than conquerors. They delivered food to famine worlds, restored power to colonies abandoned by their own governments. They ruled not through domination, but through efficiency. And perhaps that was what frightened us most, because for all our rhetoric of superiority, we had never achieved what they did in a week: peace through precision. The broadcasts that followed were few, but each carried the same human emblem, the twin rings of Earth Command, set against a black field. "Stability is not tyranny," one message read. "Justice is not vengeance." And then, the final line, repeated across 1,000 frequencies, etched into the memory of every surviving species. Coexistence was an offer. Balance is a requirement. I remained in the chamber long after Hayes had gone. Around me, delegates wept or sat in silent disbelief. The chair's throne lay empty. The data core continued to hum, casting soft light across the ruins. For the first time, I understood what the humans had been trying to teach us all along. Their courtesy had never been submission. Their patience had never been weakness. Their restraint had never been peace. It had all been practice. Practice for the day we forced them to stop pretending. Outside, the human fleet shimmered in formation. Thousands of vessels orbiting quietly above what had once been the center of galactic power. No sound. No threats. Just presence. And from that silence, a new order emerged. An order not ruled by fear or hierarchy, but by consequence. The age of the Council was over. The age of humanity, quiet, efficient, inevitable, had begun. The war ended without a declaration, without surrender, without even a final shot. It simply stopped. Across the spiral arms, fleets powered down. Orbital bombardments ceased. Worlds once burning drifted into a stillness so complete that even the stars seemed to hesitate. In the weeks that followed, a strange peace settled over the galaxy, one not born of diplomacy or exhaustion, but of quiet understanding. Humanity had won, and no one dared question how. They called it the era of quiet justice. Trade routes reopened under human supervision. Refugee convoys were guided through safe corridors, escorted by ships bearing the pale insignia of Earth Command. On dozens of worlds, reconstruction began, not through orders or threats, but through offers of help no one could refuse. The same humans who had dismantled the Council's armies now sent engineers, medics, teachers. Everywhere their fleets went, silence followed by order. It was as though the galaxy itself had taken a deep breath for the first time in millennia. When the summons came, I thought it was an arrest order, a simple transmission, encoded with my name and the emblem of Earth. Counselor Zell Rith of the Varn Dominion. You are requested to attend an assembly on Earth. You will be treated as a guest. A guest. I expected interrogation, judgment, retribution. Instead, I found something infinitely more disarming. Earth. I had seen countless worlds in my lifetime, but nothing could have prepared me for that planet. It was alive. Skies of deep blue and cloud-like silver. Cities rising from oceans and forests like glass monoliths breathing with light. Every street pulsed with renewal. Humans walked alongside alien envoys. Machines worked beside flesh. There was no arrogance in their reconstruction, only purpose. They were rebuilding not to gloat, but to continue. The humans had done the unthinkable. They had turned victory into stewardship. I met Ambassador Hayes in a glass pavilion overlooking the ruins of an ancient capital, Washington, they called it. The river below glittered with the reflection of countless memorial lights. She stood beside them, quiet, hands clasped behind her back. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, she turned to me, her voice soft. Almost tired. We were never monsters, Counselor. We just stopped pretending to be harmless. Her words lingered in the air like a weight. I searched her expression for anger, for pride, for satisfaction, found none. Only a strange melancholy. You feared us for what we might do, she continued, but you never asked what it cost us not to. That night, I walked through the memorial gardens alone. Every stone, every flame carried names not only of humans, but of the countless others who had died in the war, that never needed to be fought. Children of Other, pilots of Neath, colonists from lost worlds whose only sin was being in the way, and among them, humans, their monuments bore a single phrase. We endured because we must. There was no triumph, no glory, just remembrance. I began to understand then. Their politeness had not returned as a facade. It was penance, a conscious act of restraint, forged in the fires of what they had become capable of. The galaxy would never forget what polite mode-off meant. And neither would they. Weeks passed. Delegations arrived daily, each pledging cooperation. Not submission, just acknowledgement. The Council was gone, replaced by something quieter, smaller, but infinitely more stable. Humanity didn't govern. They guided. They listened more than they spoke, and the universe listened in return. Before I departed Earth, Hayes met me once more at the shuttle port. You've seen what happens when we're cornered, she said, her gaze steady. Pray that we never are again. I wanted to ask if she still believed in peace, but I already knew the answer. For the first time in centuries, peace was no longer an illusion. It was a warning. As my vessel left orbit, Earth shrank into a blue jewel against the darkness. Around it, the human fleets held silent watch, brilliant constellations of steel and light. They didn't patrol. They observed, guardians of a galaxy that had finally learned manners. And I, once a counselor of the proud Varn Dominion, could only whisper a prayer into the stars. May humanity never turn off their polite mode again, because if they did, there would be no galaxy left to turn it back on.